Imagine, you are the only human being on Mars. What would you do first? How would you survive in such unusual conditions? And most importantly, would you be able to pass such a test and return home? Is it difficult? Let's speculate together. Jake Harper stood on the surface of Mars, looking out at the orange rocks and sand that surrounded him. He was the last man on this red planet, having lost contact with the base due to a thunderstorm that forced him to be alone. His spacesuit was his only ally in this fight for survival. He claimed he would survive under any circumstances, including radioing to see if there were any signs of life on the base. But there was no response. His only connection to the world had been cut off. He had to rely solely on his own skills and determination. With each passing hour, Harper tackled new problems. Food and water were his primary concerns. He discovered that small amounts of water could be found inside rock formations where moisture condensed from the atmosphere. Using special devices to condense moisture, he collected this water to provide himself with a basic liquid resource. He learned to conserve water by allocating a small ration for each day, so that his resources would not run out quickly. As for food, he collected plants that might be edible, although many of them were strange and unfamiliar. He also hatched plans to grow plants inside his space module. To provide food for himself, Harper decided to grow plants inside his module. He created a small hydroponic garden, using organic fertilizer from plant debris and water he extracted. He experimented with different kinds of plants to find ones that could survive in Mars conditions. And finally, he managed to grow a small crop of vegetables and herbs. But the main problem was providing heat. The nights on Mars were cold, and without proper shelter he could freeze. He used scraps of fabric from his suit and metal sheeting from his module to build a small shelter that would keep the heat inside. But the hardest thing for Jake wasn't physical survival, it was dealing with loneliness. Every day he woke up knowing that he was the only human being for millions of kilometers around him. His thoughts returned to home, to his family, to friends he might never see again. He spent long hours talking to himself, keeping a journal to keep himself mentally stable. He looked up at the sky of Mars, often wondering about the stars and what lay beyond this desert. Sometimes he would play the small guitar he had brought with him and sing to the muffled, lonely evening wind. Being alone on Mars was one of Jake's most difficult experiences. Overwhelmed by the silence and isolation, he faced serious psychological challenges. He felt lost and cut off from the world, which could undermine his determination and sanity. To cope, Jake developed a strict routine to fill every hour of his life with activities. He spent time exercising, reading, learning new skills, and even creative pursuits. This helped him keep his mind busy and protected from despair. He also wrote down his thoughts and experiences in a journal to stay in touch with reality and maintain inner harmony. In addition, he took time for meditation and self-reflection to learn how to control his emotions and stay in psychological balance. Every day was a new challenge for Jake, but thanks to his determination and perseverance, he was able to overcome the hardships of loneliness and continue his fight for survival on Mars. The question of returning to Earth became Jake's primary goal. He knew it was the only way to survive in this unfriendly world. He began to explore the possibilities of returning, analyzing his resources and determining the necessary steps to achieve this goal. The first step was to re-establish communication with the base on Earth. Jake spent many hours trying to re-establish communication with the command center through his equipment. He used all of his skills and experience to accomplish this task. And finally, he was able to establish a stable connection. He then set about repairing his spaceship. He studied every detail and devised a plan of action to restore and improve his vehicle. It was a daunting task, but Jake was up for the challenge. He also continued to explore the surrounding area in search of resources that could help him in his quest to return to Earth. He scanned the surface of Mars, examining geologic formations and areas where useful materials might be hidden. In this way, Jake continued on his journey, striving towards his goal of returning to Earth and overcoming all the difficulties and challenges that the red planet threw at him. His determination and perseverance were his main allies in this struggle for survival. Despite all the difficulties, Jake did not give up hope of rescue. He checked his equipment regularly, hoping that communication would be restored. He also tried to keep fit by exercising and taking care of his health. Every time he saw a fleeting glimmer of light in the distance, his heart sank in hope. He dreamed that it was a rescue mission coming for him, and one day, his dream came true. He heard the noise of engines and saw a spaceship approaching his location. He managed to make contact, and the rescuers were amazed at his survival and willpower. When Jake eventually returned to Earth, his story became an object of admiration and inspiration to many. His struggle with loneliness and survival on Mars became a symbol of human strength and perseverance. But for Jake himself, the real reward was being back with his family and friends. He realized that despite the trials he had endured, nothing could replace the warmth of home and the presence of loved ones. Although his adventure on Mars had been incredible, Jake knew that his most important adventure was his return home.